Good day, everyone. I am Maybe Opiana together with Jackal Andre Gonzalez. We are the presenters of the novel entitled The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. So before proceeding to the novel itself, let us first tackle about the author's background. Stephen Chbosky is an American screenwriter, film producer, film director, novelist, television writer, and a television producer. He is best known for writing the best-selling coming-of-age novel The Perks of Being a Wallflower, as well as for writing and directing the 2012 film adaptation of the book. Stephen Chbosky's writing style combines heartfelt emotion, introspective narration, and a focus of coming-of-age experiences, making his works resonate with the readers of various ages. He has several works including novels and screenplays. Imaginary Friend, published in the year 2019, and The Perks of Being a Wallflower, published in the year 1999. In addition to his novels, Stephen Chbosky has also directed the 2017 drama Wonder and the 2021 film adaptation of Dear Evan Hansen. His first psychological horror novel, Imaginary Friend, was published in October 2019. The Perks of Being a Wallflower is his first novel and his most well-known work. Chbosky's writing style and storytelling style have left a lasting impact on readers and audiences alike.
That being said, let us now discuss the literary styles and genre of our novel. So, the genre of our novel is young adult literature, as it talks about the coming of age of Charlie as well as how he realizes things about his life and how he had dealt with his problems, which makes him more relatable to the readers. In this novel, Stephen used epistolary writing style, which is a storytelling technique where the narrative is conveyed through a series of letters, diary entries, and other written documents. In this novel, the entire story is presented in the form of letters written by the protagonist, which is Charlie, to an unknown recipient. He also used the first person narrative that enables us to see and understand the story through the character's perspective. Through these styles, we are able to deeply feel the character as we access their emotions, experiences, and world so much that we can empathize in their struggles and grow throughout the story. And also, through these styles, it actually enhances the novel's emotional impact, making it a powerful and an engaging coming of age story. So let me give you a very short overview of our novel, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. So the story is narrated through a series of letters written by our protagonist, which is Charlie, an introverted young teenager, and it follows Charlie's freshman year of high school where he grapples and faces various challenges, including coping with his past traumas, navigating new friendship, and of course, exploring love and acceptance. Before you proceed, please be mindful that the following video contains discussion that might be triggering and disturbing as the novel addresses the issues of rape, traumas, mental health, and suicide. Please view with caution.
So moving on to the contemporary issues. So let's start for the month of August. So for this month, Charlie wrote only one letter. This letter dated August 25, 1991. Charlie does not reveal his identity. He simply wants to reach out to someone regards as a good person. He begins the letter by explaining that he is both happy and sad, and he's trying to figure out how that could be. And he tries to think of his family as a reason of him being that way, especially after his friend Michael stopped going to school one day. And when they were at school, suddenly they heard Mr. Vaughn's voice on the loudspeaker saying, "Boys and girls, I regret to inform you that one of our students has passed on. We will hold a memorial service for Michael Dobson during assembly this Friday." And they told them that Michael killed himself. his mom played bridge with one of Michael's neighbors and they heard the gunshot. During the guidance counselor sessions, the few who actually liked Michael were asked to say a few words about him. The counselors seemed concerned as if they were afraid that some of them might attempt self-harm, and one of counselor kept nervously touching his beard. And proceeding to the first contemporary issue, it is mental health suicide. So for this excerpt, the counselor said that he suspected that Michael had problems at home and didn't feel like he had anyone to talk to. That's maybe why he felt all alone and killed himself. It later reveals that Charlie's friend, Michael Dobson, took his own life, leading to discussions about suicide, mental health, and impact on those who left behind. Then, Charlie started screaming at the guidance counselor that Michael could have talked to him, and he started crying even harder. Then the counselor tried to calm him down, but it didn't work, and eventually his brother came by the middle school in his Camaro to pick him up. After that incident, for this excerpt, Charlie said that for the rest of the school year, the teachers treated me different and gave me better grades even though I didn't get any smarter. To tell you the truth, I think I made them all nervous. So the contemporary issue depicted here is trauma or emotional impact. So Charlie discussed the changes the experience after Michael's death, including better treatment by teachers and feeling nervous around others, possibly due to tragedy. So now we'll be proceeding to the month of September. One of his friends, Charlie's friends, in middle school, Susan, is in Charlie's advanced English class, but she's embarrassed to tell others of her high academic standing. She had once been very fun to be around, and she was one of Michael's best friends. And according to Charlie, from this excerpt, but over the summer she had her braces taken off, and she got a little taller and prettier and grew breasts. Now she acts a lot dumber in hallways, especially when boys are around. And I think it's sad because Susan doesn't look as happy. The contemporary issue depicted here is adolescents' identity transformation and social pressures. The excerpt highlights the changes that occur in Susan during adolescence, such as physical appearances and social dynamics. It discusses how Susan's behavior has shifted after she got braces removed and gained more attention from boys. So, bullying and violence in schools. So, in this excerpt from Charlie's letter, I kept quiet most of the time, and only one kid named Sean really seemed to notice me. He waited for me after gym class and said really immature things like how he was going to give me a swirly, which is where someone sticks your head in the toilet and flashes to make your hair swirl around. He seemed pretty and happy as well, and I told him so. Then he got mad at me and started hitting me. And I just did the things my brother taught me to do. My brother is a very good fighter. Go for the knees, throat, and eyes. And I did. And I really hurt Sean. And then I started crying. So in that quotation, it mentions a bullying incident where Charlie defends himself and ends up hurting Sean. It addresses the emotional impact of such incidents on both the victim, which is Charlie, and the aggressor, named Sean. But reflecting on all this, Charlie realizes that he could have hurt Sean much more seriously, and he is very confused as to why Sean would wanted to hurt him. And after that incident, Charlie receives strange looks from the other students after the fight, but he continues to work hard in school so he can receive an academic scholarship for college. Loneliness and isolation. From this excerpt, it has been very lonely because my sister is busy being the oldest one in our family. My brother is busy being a football player at Penn State. After the training camp, his coach said that he was second string and that when he starts learning the system, he will be first string. In that excerpt, Charlie expresses feelings of loneliness and the lack of friendships at school. He feels disconnected from his siblings who are preoccupied with their own lives, and He longs for genuine companionship. Next contemporary issue is identity and self-acceptance. So, in one of Charlie's letter in September, he describes his experience in shop class. From this excerpt, he said that the point though is that there is a guy in shop class named Nothing. I'm not kidding. His name is Nothing, and he is hilarious. Nothing got his name when kids used to tease him in middle school. I think he's a senior now. The kids started calling him Patty when his real name is Patrick, and Nothing told these kids, listen, you either call me Patrick or you call me Nothing. The name Nothing asserts his own identity and demands to be called by the name he prefers, either Patrick or Nothing. This reflects the importance of self-acceptance and standing up for one's chosen identity even in the face of societal pressures or teasing. So the next contemporary issue depicted in the novel for the month of September is emotional expression and gender roles. Charlie, including his mom, dad, sister, and her brother, were all watching MASH together. And every member of the family is crying except for Charlie's father, who rose in the middle of the scene and left to make a sandwich. So here is what Charlie said. In this excerpt, my sister was crying. My brother was using every ounce of strength he had not to cry. And my dad left during one of the final moments to make a sandwich. Now, I don't remember much about the program itself because I was too young. But my dad never left to make a sandwich except during commercial breaks. And then he usually just sent my mom. I walked to the kitchen. I saw my dad making sandwich and crying. He was crying harder than even my mom. And I couldn't believe it. When he finished making his sandwich, he put away the things in the refrigerator and stopped crying and wiped his eyes and saw me. Then he walked up, patted my shoulder and said, "This is our little secret, okay, chum?" "Okay," I said. So, as Charlie mentioned in their conversation with her father, it is a portrayal of a father crying during a TV show and trusting him with his vulnerability, which challenges traditional gender roles that discourage emotional expression, especially from men. Let's proceed now to the contemporary issues depicted in the month of October. First is adolescent sexuality and masturbation. In this month, Charlie starts to engage in sexual practice, which is masturbation. Here's what he said in the letter. I guess I forgot to mention in my last letter that it was Patrick who told me about masturbation. I guess I also forgot to tell you how often I do it now, which is a lot. I don't like to look up at pictures. I just close my eyes and dream about a lady I do not know and try not to feel ashamed. So in Charlie's previous letter in this month of October, he mentioned about the sexual dream that he had about Sam. He's crying the process while telling it to her. But Sam only laughs in a warm, comforting way, telling Charlie, "You know that you're too young for me? Charlie, you do know that?" Yeah. In that excerpt, Charlie discusses his discovery of masturbation and how he engages in it frequently. This touches upon the topic of adolescent sexuality and the exploration of one's body and desires during this developmental stage. Usage of drugs. Charlie has been trying to participate rather than just observe. He has been trying to go to social events like homecoming dance and football game, which he attends with Sam and Patrick. He is beginning to feel closer to the both of them, and he appreciates that they don't regard him as crazy for some of the things he does or pretends to do. Sam invites Charlie to a party that takes place after the game. Charlie accepts because he had never been to a party before, though his older brother had once thrown one in their house when Charlie's parents were away for a wedding. So while at the party, there's this one guy named Bob who started to pass around foods. Then he asked Charlie if he likes some brownies. And here's what happened according to the excerpt. I was actually quite hungry because normally Sam and Patrick take me to the big boy after the football games. And I guess I was used to it by now. I ate the brownie and it tasted a little weird. but it was still a brownie. So I still liked it. But this was not an ordinary brownie. Since you are older, I think you know what kind of brownie it was. So the excerpt portrays a scene where Charlie unknowingly consumes marijuana-laced brownies at a party. This raises the issue of drug use among young individuals and its potential effects on their experiences and perceptions. Acceptance of LGBTQ+. And after Charlie ate the brownie, it causes him to get stoned and have a desire for a milkshake. So while Sam is making him a milkshake, Charlie walks upstairs to use the bathroom and hears a noise in the room where everyone left their coats. So here's what he says on the letter. When I got out of the bathroom, I heard a noise in the room where he left our coats. I opened the door and I saw Patrick kissing Brad. It was a stolen type of kissing. They heard me in the door and turned around. Patrick spoke first. Is that you, Charlie? Sam's making a milkshake. Who is that? Who is this kid? Brad just looked real nervous and not in a bad way. He's a friend of mine. Relax. Patrick then took me out of the room and closed the door. He put his hands on both of my shoulders and looked me straight in the eye. Brad doesn't want people to know. Why? Because he's scared. Why? Because he is. Wait, are you stoned? So in that party scene, it reveals Patrick has a secret affair with Brad. It touches upon LGBTQ+, themes such as coming to terms with one's identity and the importance of self-acceptance. Because Brad was scared to come out who he really was. And now, proceeding to the month of November. The first contemporary issue depicted in the month of November is lack of parental support. One night at a party, Brad and Patrick went to Patrick's room and had sex for the first time. Brad began to cry. After several attempts to comfort Brad, Patrick pulled up Brad's pants and said, "Just pretend you're passed out." Patrick left the room and entered the party from a different direction, asking everyone if they had seen Brad. When people went to search for him, they found him asleep on Patrick's bed, and Patrick called Brad's parents. Brad's parents never did figure out why their son was getting stoned and drunk all the time. Neither did anybody else except the people who knew. The excerpt mentions Brad's parents' lack of awareness regarding their son's struggles with his identity and substance abuse, potentially touching on the importance of parental understanding and support in such situations. Next is failed marriage after losing a child. So, while Charlie and her mother are quietly walking, her mom mentioned about Michael's parents. Here's what he had written in the letter. I guess I should mention that my mom had heard that Michael's parents are divorced now. She said that only 70% of marriages stay together when they lose a child. I think she read it in a magazine somewhere. The mention of Michael's parents divorcing after a loss of a child raises awareness of the impact of loss on families and how they cope up with such tragedies. Next is racism. Charlie talked about what had happened in their family gathering during holiday. Here's what he said to his letter. My grandfather usually just complains about black people moving into the old neighborhood. And then my sister gets upset at him. And then my grandfather tells her that she doesn't know what she's talking about because she lives in the suburbs. That kind of racial prejudice leads to tension within the family, with the Charlie sister, which is Sam, becoming upset and attempting to challenge her grandfather's views. Family conflict. According to Charlie's letter, I should mention that my dad usually just sits real quiet and drinks. My dad is not a big drinker at all, but when he has to spend time with my mom's family, he gets loaded, as my cousin Tommy says. Deep down, I think my dad would rather spend the holiday with his family in Ohio. That way, he wouldn't have to be around my grandfather. He doesn't like my grandfather very much, but he keeps quiet about it. even on the ride home. He just doesn't think it's his place. Charlie's father inclination to drink heavily during the gatherings suggests that he may use alcohol as a coping mechanism to deal with the stress and discomfort he experienced around his mother's family, particularly his grandfather. Next is poverty. From this excerpt, he told us that when he was 16, he had to leave school because his dad died and and someone had to support the family. He talked about the time when he had to go to the mill 3 times a day to see was if there was any work for him. And he talked about how cold it was and how hungry he was because he made sure his family always ate before him. Things he said we just wouldn't understand because we were lucky. And that happened when Charlie and his brother drove their grandfather at home. And the contemporary issue depicted in that excerpt is poverty, since his grandfather shares his past experience, highlighting the challenges he faced when he was 16 years old, wherein he had to leave school due to the death of his father, which led him into the responsibility of supporting his family. He talks about the struggle of finding a work in a mill where he had to go 3 times a day just to see if there was any work available despite how cold the weather was. He endured it while prioritizing his family's needs over his own. And last, for my part, which is the contemporary issue depicted in the month of December. So the contemporary issue depicted in the month of December is depression and anxiety. So from this excerpt in the letter of Charlie, I don't know if you've ever felt like that you wanted to sleep for 1,000 years or just not exist, or just not to be aware that you do exist, or something like that. I think one thing that is very morbid, but I want it when I get like this. That's why I'm trying not to think. I just want it all to stop spinning. Uh, In that excerpt, Charlie's feelings of depression and thoughts of not wanting to exist touch on the issue of mental health struggles among adolescents and the need for support and understanding during those times. And throughout the events in this month, Charlie is clearly battling something intense and severe. It is mysterious though, because Charlie is not quite able to articulate what he is feeling or why he is feeling it. And what becomes slightly more apparent in Charlie's own background is specifically that he received psychiatric treatment as a young boy after Aunt Helen died. The guilt that he felt over her death has continued to paralyze him in his current relationships.
For the month of January. Following the month of December, Charlie's first month of the new year didn't get any better. First, he was given an LSD by a stranger in Bob's house. LSD, or lysergic acid diethylamide, is a potent psychedelic drug that induces wild hallucinations, which is why in the novel Charlie had written that he sees things move. And to add cherry on top, Charlie had heard Sam and Craig being intimate or doing the deed, which brought us to the January's first contemporary issue, which is suicidal tendencies and depression. Because at that moment, at that time, he had felt that he wanted to kill himself. And he even confessed at the end of the letter that I had never wanted to. You have to believe me. It is so relatable because as a teenager experiencing purity and coming of age, we experience a lot of emotional ups and downs. There are times that we felt that the whole world was against us, that we just wanted to end things. I remember before that I used to flick a rubber band on my arm because I felt anxious and just wrong all over. And at the end of the day, I would get this guilty feeling trying to justify that I really don't want to do it like how Charlie did not, because the next moment in his letters, he apologized for how he think. But of course, as I've said, Charlie's January is pretty bad. So as he worries about the after effects of LSD and being teased by the whole school for for wearing a suit, he decided to try smoking. So at that point, another contemporary issue comes to play, which is the underage smoking. And it is an issue that we face right now as a lot of teenagers are doing it. In my high school, I know at least 10 people who does smoking and vaping in my batch. And like how Charlie had said in the quotation, when I lit it, I didn't cough. It actually felt soothing. I know that's bad in a health class way, but it was true. And while majority of teenagers smoke because of peer pressure and for looking cool, Charlie had done it because after trying and failing to get his life back together, as he had described it, he decided to screw it, skip class, and smoke with Patrick and Sam. The latter then proceeded to teach him how to do it and even went on explaining what the trance is. And at the end of the letter for January, Charles' tone had become better as he talked about how great this new psychiatrist he was seeing was. Then come February. So, the highlight of Charlie's February was first when Mary Elizabeth asked him out. He was ecstatic over it and even went to ask Sam for dating advice, which he then tried to get a practice kiss from her and wrote that he wished he could stop loving Sam. He also went to his sister for an advice, but something was clearly wrong with her, and it was later revealed when Charlie witnessed her sister and her boyfriend broke up in the middle of a dance that she was actually pregnant. According to Philippines Orphanage Foundation, about 6% of Filipinas are affected by teenage pregnancy, and that's about the second highest rate in the Southeast Asia based on Save the Children's Global Childhood Report from 2019. And it was so sad to think because not only does teenage girl's life is ruined, but also her child. Because she's unprepared for the motherhood that sometimes they can't help resorting to options like adoption or worse, abortion, which is what Charlie's sister had done in the novel. I told my sister that after a while, she probably couldn't hide it, but she said she wouldn't let it go that far. Since she was 18, she didn't need mom or dad's permission. All she needed was someone to be with her next Saturday at the clinic, and that person was me. And that's exactly what they did. The two then told us all about it and secretly went to a clinic to do the abortion. And actually, this was the first big task anyone had given Charlie, so once again, he experienced a great turmoil while waiting for his sister. And like the good boy he is, he dealt with it by going to the car to smoke, which his sister caught and proceeded to scolding him. So, moving on, Charlie's March was filled with events about Mary Elizabeth. Okay, so although he didn't literally or explicitly label Mary Elizabeth as chatty, he had described his interaction with her as she's the only one giving opinions and he can get in a word at all. And although they went second base and got intimate at her house, he became pretty uncomfortable and annoyed with her as she invited herself in a dinner with his family, Patrick and Sam. So he did the next best thing he could and asked his sister for an advice, which she then said and replied that by introducing Charlie to all those great things, Mary Elizabeth gained a superior position that she wouldn't need if she was confident about herself. She also said that the people who try to control situations all the time are afraid that if they don't, nothing will work out the way they want. So the contemporary issue of or the issue of insecurity and low self-esteem comes from the household one lives in. Sometimes because of unsupportive family and loved ones, we started to doubt ourselves and our capabilities that affects our whole attitude and outtake in life. Which is why it is important that there are people in our life that could wholeheartedly support us and give us the praise and recognition that we deserve. And now, if you thought that December and January were rough for Charlie, brace yourself for April because this month hits him way more harder. Here he struggled with existential crisis as he constantly asked what was wrong with him and how could he change it. It was evident in the quote, I just wish that God or my parents or Sam or my sister or someone would just tell me what's wrong with me. Just tell me how to be different in a way that makes sense. To make this all go away and disappear. I know that's wrong because it's my responsibility. And I know that things get worse before they get better because that's what my psychiatrist says. But this is a worse that feels too big. It was after he had messed up in a truth or dare game when Patrick dared him to kiss the prettiest girl in the room. And he actually decided to be honest at the time and promptly kissed Sam, although Mary Elizabeth was there. It was then that he felt his friends being gone and a sense of loneliness and isolation came back to him that prompted him to approach Susan. So he had another realization in his life, and I quote, it suddenly dawned on me that if Michael were still around, Susan probably wouldn't be going out with him anymore. Not because she's a bad person, or shallow, or mean, but because things change and friends live and life don't stop for anybody. This realization underscores the bittersweet nature of human connections, emphasizing the importance of cherishing moments with loved ones while also embracing the fluidity rather, of life's journey. And now for the month of May. So here, Charlie continued smoking the pot that he got from Bob, which started after the dare, and he once again started his wallflower ways as he continued going to the Rocky Horror Picture Show and just silently observed everyone. But the highlight for me would be when Brett's father finally found out about his and Patrick's relationship. It said in the quote, I guess that Brad's father didn't know about his son because when he caught them, Brad's father started beating Brad. Not a slap kind of beating, a belt kind, a real kind. Patrick told Sam, who told Bob, that he had never seen anything like it. I guess it was that bad. He wanted to say, stop, and you're killing him. He even wanted to hold Brad's father down, but he just froze, and Brad kept yelling, get out! To Patrick, and finally, Patrick just did. It deals with the issues of homophobia, which is pretty normal during that time, as the LGBT community weren't as accepted as they were today. And even before, there are still a lot of stereotypes and gender roles that people conform to, which makes the Brad's father's reaction pretty normal. And as a result, Brad and Patrick broke off their relationship. One day during lunch, Patrick confronted Brad, who then proceeded in calling him a faggot, which then Patrick responded with a punch. It caused a chaos in the nurturing center, and Patrick was gung up by Brad's football team members. But fortunately, Charlie had Patrick's back and put use his anger issues into rescuing his friend. And in the novel, despite not fully going into the details, Charlie had still described his fight, which he caused a broken knee as he slammed a metal chair on Brad's football team member and almost made another member blind. And also, he gave a warning or a threat to Brad afterwards. And later, they got punishments, with Charlie getting off with detention. It was then that Sam finally talked to him again. It was at that point that they once again reaffirmed their friendship. The following days was Charlie hanging out with Patrick as the latter tried to get wasted and move on from Brad. Unfortunately, during one of their hangouts, they saw Brad kissing another man in a park, and Patrick did not do anything but walk away. Charlie also did not offer Patrick any comforting words at the time and just remained silent, just like how he did in the nights before when he had let Patrick kiss him and cry on his shoulder. He quoted that we didn't do anything other than kiss, and we didn't even do that for a very long time. After a while, his eyes lost the glazy, numb look from the wine or the coffee or the fact that he had stayed up the night before. Then he started crying. Then he started talking about Brad, and I just let him, because that's what friends are for. Charlie just went with where things are going, because he said, and in a quote, that's what friends are for. Then come June. This is the month where Charlie's sister and his friends are finally graduating. And aside from that, he is also saying goodbye to his teacher, to, uh, advanced English teacher Bill. In one of his letters, he and Bill ate outside, and along with Bill's girlfriend. In there, Bill had told him that he was actually aiming to go to look for a job as a playwright, but then decided to keep his job as a teacher because he enjoyed it. And he told Charlie that he was special in all the things and encouraging him to continue writing and doing his best. And at that moment, Charlie replied that you're the best teacher I ever had. This is actually a touching moment between teacher and student, and that line is actually, I think, one of the most inspiring and heartwarming thing that a student will say to a teacher ever, and which is why I had to put it there. So throughout the whole letters he wrote for the month, Charlie had kept his tone light with underlying sadness from the fact that he will be alone again and that his friends will be leaving him. He kept overthinking and imagining for when it was his turn to graduate and as his way to cope with the nearing inevitable event. Even so, Charlie had still prepared gifts for his friends as a farewell, which are the books that he enjoyed reading and a card. And because he can't keep himself from crying, Sam took him to the kitchen where they had a conversation about how Charlie needs to live his life, that he can't giving a shoulder because sometimes what other needs might be his hand, and that she told him at the beginning to stop thinking romantically about her because she didn't think Charlie was there, because she needed to feel more than see when a guy loves him. Thus, in the last day before is set to leave, the two made out and almost went to do the deed until something happened to Charlie. At that moment, when Sam touched him below, a memory assaulted Charlie. At first, he didn't know what it was and just felt uncomfortable, so Sam laid him down on the couch, where he promptly slept and dreamt of a time when him and his Aunt Helen would be sitting in front of the TV watching, and the next minute, she too would be touching the place that Sam had touched before. So, in the letter, he had written, I don't know what's wrong with me. It's like all I can do is keep writing this gibberish to keep from breaking apart. Sam's gone, and Patrick won't be home for a few days. And I just couldn't talk with Mary Elizabeth or anybody, or my brother, or anybody in my family, except maybe Aunt Helen, but she's gone. And even if she were here, I don't think I could talk to her either, because I'm starting to feel like what I dreamt about her last night was true, and my psychiatrist questions weren't weird after all. This shows that Charlie had used repression as a way of coping mechanism or a defense mechanism to repress or to keep himself to repress the unpleasant memories of his Aunt Helen abusing him. So repression is um, repressing memories of the experience or disconnect from the feeling or thoughts associated with it. It is as I've said before, it is a defense mechanism that someone may employ to cope with trauma. And it is actually sad to think that a child would use this as a defense mechanism because he experienced that something a child should never have experienced in his childhood. Okay, so for the last one, we have the month of August, is the last letter and the epilogue of of the novel. So, but first, Charlie didn't think too much of the dream and assured in the letter that he was okay. But actually, in the epilogue, which was said 2 months later, it was revealed that his aunt indeed molested him before. And it actually tackled the issue of child sexual abuse. And it was just known that when his parents had found him in front of the TV fully naked and unresponsive, and which they had brought him to the hospital. Everything then was a blur to Charlie, and just know that everyone that he had loved showed support to him during his 2 month stay at the hospital that time. So in his last letter, Charlie's words echoed with a mix of optimism and acceptance. He acknowledged the possibility that this letter might be the last that the unknown recipient, will receive, but wanted to assure that he was doing well. Even in the face of difficult times, he found comfort in the belief that things would get better with time. And at last, he had quoted that, so if this does end up being my last letter, please believe that things are good with me. And even when they're not, they will be soon enough.
So, moving on to the contemporary themes of the novel. So, first is importance of friendship. This quotation is from Sam's advice to Charlie, wherein she said that it's great that you can listen and be a shoulder to someone. But what about when someone doesn't need a shoulder? What if they need arms or something like that? You just can't sit there and put everybody's lives ahead of yours and think that counts as love. You just can't. You have to do things. It simply says that offering a shoulder to lean on or being a good listener is valuable, but it's equally crucial to recognize that individuals might need more than just emotional support. The passage encourages empathy and understanding, recognizing that different people have different needs and that true love and support involve being attuned to those needs and responding accordingly. It urges readers to be proactive in showing care and kindness not only through words but also through meaningful actions that can make difference in someone's life. Next is significance of music during adolescence. From this excerpt in the novel, and I thought about how many people have loved those songs and how many people got through a lot of bad times because of those songs and how many people enjoyed good times with those songs and how much those songs really mean. I think it would be great to have written one of those songs. I bet if I wrote one of them, I would be very proud. And I hope the people who wrote those songs are happy. I hope they feel it's enough. I really do because they made me happy. And I'm only one person. In this quote, Charlie reflects on the power of music and its significance during adolescence. He recognizes the universal impact of songs and how they connect people, providing comfort and support during both good and bad times. Through this reflection, Charlie exemplifies the profound emotional experience that often characterize adolescence. And the third theme is trauma can lead to mental health illness. Trauma can have a lasting impact on an individual's mental and emotional well-being, affecting memory and overall psychological functioning. It underscores the importance of providing support, understanding, and empathy to those who have experienced trauma and highlights the significance of positive memories and emotional connections in the healing process.